The show starts now. Well, the Super Bowl is over, and that means the Biden administration has to face the music and answer some questions. In the last 2 weeks alone, we've had a 3-bus-sized Chinese spy balloon traversing our nation and 3 other unidentified objects, bringing us to a total of 4 things shot down so far this month alone, and it's the 15th. But has the Biden administration answered for it? Has Joe addressed it? Hell no, of course not. That's the MO of this administration. If you ignore something long enough, it'll just go away. Think about it. That's been the strategy with everything from the open border to the crackhead's laptop to the garage classified documents and now the objects floating overhead. It's one thing to not study for the test, but this is worse than that. These Biden hacks won't even take the test. Their strategy is to leave all the bubbles blank and hope we won't notice. We notice. And it's not just Joe and Kamala. It's also that little Mayor Pete who, for God only knows what reason, okay, we do, was chosen as the transportation secretary. First, it was a supply chain crisis he was on paternity leave for. Then it was the airline debacles 1 through at least 3. Then the railway strikes, and now the derailments. That's plural, an accompanying explosion that he's just not up to addressing other than some lame-ass tweets. It was a huge explosion in Ohio, an explosion that now threatens drinking water, pets, and people. That's just tweet-worthy, Petey boy. But folks, you know what Pete did have time to address? Racist construction projects. Take a listen to this doozy.
We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, doing the good-paying jobs, don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Right.
You can build community wealth that will help close wealth gaps in this country if we can tear down those barriers. But that happens at the delivery level.
Too many whites working construction. That is what has his attention. You really can't make this crap up, though I really wish I was. Over the weekend, as many of us were munching chicken wings and throwing back beers ahead of the big game, another high-altitude object was shot down, this one over Lake Huron in Michigan. We still don't know what the object was or where it came from, but don't worry, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre wants you to know it's probably not aliens.
I just wanted to make sure we address this from the White House. I know there have been questions and concerns about this, but there is no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity with these recent takedowns. Again, there is no indication of aliens or terrestrial activity with these recent takedowns.
I mean, hell, it could be aliens. I wouldn't be surprised if the extraterrestrial took one look at Joe Biden and said, yeah, now is the time we take Earth over. I wouldn't blame them, and honestly, they could probably run it better. But aside from aliens, we still have a lot of questions surrounding these objects, not to mention the recent derailment and explosion in Ohio, and so much more. Here to break it down with me is former Michigan gubernatorial candidate Tudor Dixon. Tudor, it's great to have you, and I have a lot of questions for you to address with me.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I want to start with that object. Now, we've had a very busy last couple of weeks with the Chinese spy balloon and then the other 3 objects that we had. And now we've got this horrible crisis going on right now in Ohio. There's a lot to go over, but I do want to go back to your home state and that object that was shot down over Lake Huron. So I was, before the Super Bowl, when we were getting ready for the big Sunday show, this was happening. And then we had a briefing from the DOD that was audio only about 15 minutes before kickoff. So I don't think a lot of Americans got a lot of answers on everything. And we still have yet to really get any answers. What can you tell us about what happened over Lake Huron?
Well, we have no answers. And that's the scary thing about this, because we know that we scrambled jets to Canada. We shot an object down there. We shot this object down over Lake Huron. We shot an object over Alaska. What are these objects? And now they're coming out and they're saying they're not alien. We don't think they're from China. They could be commercial or they could be research-based objects. We don't know because we haven't even found them. I mean, that's the really bizarre thing. We shot them down. We have no idea where they are. We haven't located them yet. We don't know what they were when we shot them down. And how did we find them? they're like, well, you know what? We tweaked radar a little bit, and turns out there's more stuff in the skies than we had any idea about. So think about how bizarre this is, because, if you're flying a drone near an airport, you can't do it. You have to have special permissions. So how would the FAA not know if a commercial company was putting something in the sky, if a university had some sort of a research balloon out there? I don't believe that we don't know what's in our skies, and that we're so technologically behind that we have to be like, oh, let's turn this dial. Oh, shoot, look at all these things that are actually floating above us. That's scary in and of itself.
Oh, it certainly is. And then we've got news that they missed this object the first time. So that's incredibly concerning. Still haven't gotten a lot of information on that. But how concerned are people in Michigan and in that region about the fact that they missed an object? They seem to be shooting down an object every other day at this point, but maybe not always hitting the target. Can't even find where they miss. Can't find when they do hit it. I mean, there's a lot of questions, a lot of concern.
Sure, they missed. They don't know where that missile went. So that's missing. That's scary. Are we that out of practice that we don't know how to take an object out of the sky? And the thing is that you hear all of us talking about this and we're saying, what happened? What happened? We wouldn't be opining on this if they would come out and speak. But Joe Biden is refusing to come out and speak. And you have this press secretary who clearly has no idea what to say. She's in her notes constantly. We just see the top of her head because she has no idea how to respond to this. And I'm sure she's thinking, how did I end up with a president who will not address the nation when you have a military operation? We've spent $500,000 on each one of these flights that went out and performed this shoot down operation. And yet the president of the United States does not think that he owes an answer to the American people. So he's going to allow this to continue. And let's remember, this is after we just went through a pandemic where we're all saying, do we even trust what we're hearing from the government officials? Now they've decided to take it to a new level. Just say nothing. Say nothing.
Yeah, he had a perfect opportunity on Super Bowl Sunday, actually, when Americans were hyper tuned into their television. We knew about this object. He could have come on well before the Super Bowl, at least given us some information, made people in that area and all areas feel a little more comfortable about what's going on. Tell them if they have a need to concern or if they don't, if they're safe, if they're unsafe, what they need to worry about. He chose not to do that. The night before, though, he had hosted another black tie gala, so we know where his priorities lie. Next thing I want to talk to you about, though, is more going on in your home state, which is a tragic occurrence, of course, being politicized, but not to the level that most shootings or school shootings are. I want to talk about the Michigan State shooting. Immediately when a tragedy like this happens, it seems like the news media, the fake news media at large, just looks to the perpetrator and looks at what color they are and then makes a decision of how they're going to cover it. Do you think that that was somewhat the case when it comes to this shooting?
I think what happened here is that they realized that this shooting goes back to failed Democrat policies, and the media is the arm of the Democrat Party. And so they said, oh no, we have a rogue prosecutor that was appointed by the governor. And she ran, when she was running this race trying to become the prosecutor of Ingham County, her statement, or what she was running on, was that she was not going to put people in jail for gun crimes. So now you have someone who should have been convicted of a felony, gun possession, and they would have then not been able to buy a firearm. This situation goes even deeper than this. When you peel back the layers of the onion here, you go, wait a minute, this is a man who had several police calls against him. Several times neighbors called the police because here in the city limits, has target practice in his backyard, and they're calling the police. But in Ingham County, what do the police do when they know the prosecutor has made it clear that we're not going to even see someone who has a gun offense? So what are they going to do? They're going to go there and say, hey, your neighbors are complaining of noise again. They want you to stop shooting, but they cannot arrest him on a gun crime. So lo and behold, there's a university in the 17th most dangerous city in the country, Lansing. That's right. Our capital city is the 17th most dangerous city in the country because we have a prosecutor who is soft on crime. And then this person wanders into the university. How many times do we have to see tragedy in these cities that have they're not following law at all? And you see these lawmakers come out and they say, oh, we need stricter gun laws. But that was one day. They're not really saying that because the attorney general in Michigan came out and said, well, why don't we prosecute to the laws that we have and then see how that goes? Because if we had done that in this case, we may not be seeing this tragedy today. And I think that's the most disturbing part about this. Soft on crime, we end up with young people who have great futures that are gone.
Exactly. And you bring up a good point about these activist DAs. Now, listen, there's a lot of folks out there that believe we should go after police when something horrific happens. But I think, why not go after this DA? Shouldn't they be held as somewhat liable if it was their policies and it was on their watch that this person was allowed to slip through the cracks? I think that there should be some accountability there. I'm not going to hold my breath. I don't think it's going to happen. But you also have a wonderful governor in your state. I know that you did your best and you did a great job of trying to unseat her, but she's just a mess up and down, sideways. I want to go back to the China discussion as well, because not only is she, trying to be a TikToker, a communist TikToker, but also I know that you have a lot of concerns about how she's acquiescing to China. She's doing it right under everybody's nose, but I'm not sure that the people of Michigan or the U.S. really understand the magnitude of what she's doing and the national security implications that it has.
The massive amount of money that she is taking from taxpayers in Michigan and giving to China. So you brought up TikTok. I think this is adorable that Jake Tapper comes out. And think about this. Jake Tapper comes out and says to her, don't you think this is probably a problem? You shouldn't be using TikTok. I mean, I've had people on my program saying it's dangerous. You've got Chuck Schumer saying we're going to ban it on all federal devices. Don't you think maybe TikTok, not so good? And she says, oh, no, don't worry. We've got a safe phone. That's all we have on it. Are you that obsessed with your dances? And what she's putting on TikTok is like, she goes through a leather jacket photo shoot and she has her dogs out there. And she says, well, we've got to get important information out to the people. So are there moments when she says, gosh, I feel like this is a good TikTok moment. Get the TikTok burner phone out. We've got to get this. And then we'll throw it away. It's totally secure. Oh, nobody believes that Gretchen Whitmer has a secure phone just for TikTok. And how ridiculous to think that she is going to put national security at risk so that she can go out there and show you her different leather jackets. It's outrageous. But in addition to this, you're right. We've got two companies coming to Michigan from China. And I think the really sick thing is that we have one from Ford. Ford, all the media here is saying Ford is bringing a new battery plant here. This is a partner. This is a battery plant owned by the Chinese, with ties to the Chinese Communist Party, and she is investing $1 billion of Michigan taxpayer dollars into this Chinese company. So here we are between Canada and the United States, the very center of North America. And we are now the epicenter of Chinese activity because we've got two factories. The first one got $715 million worth of taxpayer funds. This one will get $1 billion worth of taxpayer funds to come straight into Michigan.
When you talk to me about it, I understand the implications of something like that, but it's very hard to convince the voters in Michigan, and you know this better than anybody, that this is a problem because, like you said, what they're being messaged is that this means jobs and opportunity. They don't understand the implications of having a Chinese company, what that could mean for the short term and for dang sure the long term, not just for Michigan, but for the United States. How do we go about messaging that? And I say that to you and to me, who both have a vested interest in making sure that people understand. What do you think the best way is for us to message that to people so they understand not only about these plants and this money that's being invested with China, but also, my God, TikTok? How do we convince stupid young people that it's not that important to watch people dance and cook their chicken in NyQuil? How do we convince them to delete TikTok forever? A lot of issues, and it all goes back to messaging.
Well, I have to say, I am glad to see Chuck Schumer coming out and saying this. We're seeing Democrats coming out and saying, actually, TikTok's no good. But we've seen a lot of Republicans saying that for a while now. I will point out Governor Youngkin. He's been fantastic on this messaging. In fact, if you are in Michigan and you're watching this, know that Ford went to Virginia first. Ford thought Virginia was a better bet than Michigan, their legacy home state. They decided to go to Virginia first. And Governor Youngkin said to them very clearly, we don't believe that jobs are more valuable than national security. It should never be that you are so desperate to try to recruit jobs to your community that you are willing to put everyone else in the country, including your own state, into a dangerous situation with an adversary. And I think that's the important thing to understand about China. I was talking to some folks in Washington, D.C., and I said, well, when you look at the trade deficit, we're importing about 150 billion. It's over 600, or we're importing over 600 from them. We're sending about 150 billion to them. What is the impact of that? Don't they feel like we are an important part of their community? And they said, you're thinking of this rationally. China doesn't feel that way. You've got to be very careful when you're dealing with China because they have a 100-year goal. When they're looking at what the future is, they're looking at this from a standpoint of, they don't have terms. It's not going to be that they're going to get a new president. What can they do to take over the world? We're looking at this from an 8-year goal. We've got to change that perspective and make sure that we are safe from a dictator who wants to take over the world. And think about it from this perspective. If you are an environmentalist and if you are so concerned about electric vehicles and making sure that we're going electric and we are taking care of the community, then know that you should not partner with a country that is putting more pollutants into the air than any other country, a country that allows child labor, a country that goes after organ harvesting, and a country that has slaves. This is not the answer to your Green New Deal. So don't go with China. And if that's the way we have to message it, then people need to understand exactly what's happening there.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the environment because I want to turn lastly to Ohio and the devastating impacts of that explosion there. I mean, pets, people, drinking water, it is toxic right now. I have yet to see Al Gore. I have yet to see Greta. I have yet to see any of these environmentalists that really stake their entire career on the environment and this Green New Deal. I have yet to see them on the ground paying attention to this. What do you think the implications of this are going to be? And do you think the Biden administration and Pete Buttigieg can get away with their silence on this and their inaction for much longer?
Well, I think this is a very interesting time when you have Pete Buttigieg coming out and saying that he wants equity and construction and all of these things about whether or not we have the right color people doing certain jobs. And he has not addressed a crisis. Here is an equity hire. This is a guy that was hired because he checked boxes, not because he was capable of doing his job. And he is showing us exactly why that is a bad idea, why you have to hire people that have experience, because he said nothing about this. He has not come out and said, wait a minute, we've got to get teams on the ground. We should have the federal government there. I mean, this is a disaster situation, and we're not responding to it like a disaster. We don't have FEMA there. We don't have people out there testing to see what exactly is going on in these homes, whether or not it's safe to have people go back. We've got livestock dropping dead. What is happening with our farms in the middle of the country? Is it safe for these people to continue operating these farms? Is it safe to drink the water there? There are no answers. This administration has become well known for being the monarchy of North America, where they feel we don't answer to anybody. We don't have to come out and talk to you about any of these things. You are not, your concern is not valuable to us. But now we are in a situation where these parents are concerned about having their kids drink the water. We're concerned about the livestock. Like I said, these are all massive concerns for the entire country. And it's as if we're looking the other way. It's unthinkable. It should absolutely be a reason people say, well, this party should be out of power come 24, but we also need people stepping up. And I like the fact that JD Vance has been out there. They're speaking on behalf of these folks, but something needs to happen. There need to be government people on the ground right now saying, we're going to make sure these people are safe.
And I know that you well remember what happened in Flint, Michigan, and there's a lot of Democrats that use that, especially in Michigan, and they talk about it often, and it's usually the Democrats that do. Well, now we've got another situation we can get ahead of, but because of Democrat inaction, we may not be there yet. Now, the last thing I want to ask you about, and I have to make it quick, I do have to get your final thoughts, though, because you mentioned 2024 on Nikki Haley running for president. My final thoughts on it are coming up later in the show, but I want to know your initial reaction when you saw that announcement yesterday.
You know what? As a woman who just ran for a statewide office, I love it because I think the more often we see women going for powerful, high-level positions, it's just breaking that glass ceiling even more and welcoming more women to get involved in the political process. It makes it a little less scary for those women who say, how can I do this? And so from my perspective, having just gone through a race, I say, the more young people that can see a woman on our side of the aisle going for this, it makes me really excited.
It makes me excited too. It's nice to see a woman. I don't know if that's the woman that I want to see, but my final thoughts are coming up on that later. And I look forward to talking to you about this again as we get on down the line. Tudor, thank you for spending so much time with me. God bless you, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.